Hi, everybody. Dan Illman, Mike Beer, taking a look at race number 8 at Keeneland on opening day Friday. It's the Grade 3 Transylvania. These are 3-year-olds going a mile and a 16th on the turf, $400,000. Let's sink our teeth into the Transylvania. It is a big field. It is a competitive field. And Caddyshack fans, well, they're going to go for the 11 Carl Spackler.
Man, you worked it all in there in that open. Very, very well done, Illman. Yeah, this horse is 3-1 on the morning line. I suspect you're going to be asked to take quite a bit shorter than that come post time, just based on the first 2 starts from Carl Spackler, which are both, let's be honest, they're both pretty impressive.
It's Chad Brown, it's Tyler Gaffalione, it's a beautifully bred Irish son of Lope de Vega. We'll talk a little bit more about Carl Spackler, and he could benefit from a quick pace up front. That's how our friends at Timeform US are projecting the pace after the first half mile. Note that red bar, fast pace up front, and why not? The 7 Mustache has a little bit of speed. The 12 Dude in Colorado is fast out of there. I don't think Carl Spackler needs to be that close to the pace. I don't think Nagarok has to be that close to the pace. But I wouldn't be surprised if some of these others show some speed. It's really key for the 12 Dude in Colorado to get a break and not lose a lot of ground going into the first turn.
Yeah, it's a tough post for him. In defense of that post position, I guess if you want to take the positive view of it, he does have Irad on his back, and he'll usually find a way to get a horse into the right spot here. Then I don't know. When I was a little surprised when I first looked up the pace projector. I do think there are some fast horses in here. Maybe they'll all be going. I didn't necessarily see this race playing out as some kind of super fast competitive pace, but I guess that's possible.
If the pace is hot, maybe the One Freedom Trail and the great Frankie Dettori at 20-1 have an outside chance. This horse is pretty good form. He won his first 2 starts on turf for an excellent trainer in John Terranova. One of those was the Awad going a mile and a 16th on the turf. They tried him on the dirt in the Kentucky Jockey Club. When you've got a promising 2-year-old, you're supposed to take a shot. And then last time out in the Columbia, while he finished behind Mustache, it was his first start of the year in a building block.
It was also pretty terrible trip that he got in that race, Dan. I mean, we'll see what happens going forward. I think that Mustache also coming out of that race is pretty good, but if I was going to take one horse out of that Columbia, it would be this horse. The way that race played out in front of him, he had absolutely no chance in there. Irad just rated him, put him behind horses. He got shuffled back on the backstretch. He could not improve his position all the way around the turn of that race and was still far back in the stretch. He actually ran at the end. It was way too late.
The number 2 is Web Slinger going out for Mark Cassie, Javier Castellano, a winner 2 starts back in a first level allowance, then just couldn't make up the necessary ground against Dude in Colorado last time out in the Colonel Liam. That was kind of a slow-paced race. Maybe Web Slinger was against the flow. He does have tactical speed, and I think if he could drift a little bit off those 5-1 morning line odds, he becomes a lot more appealing to me.
I agree. He's the horse I think I want to use anyway. I just like all of his turf races, and I do think he was best in the Colonel Liam last time. He couldn't get there at the end, but he was up against Dynamics that day. I still thought he ran really well. I liked his return from the layoff. I even felt like he ran pretty well, and maybe a little bit of an underrated performance at the Breeders' Cup last year. Dan, he got into an awful lot of traffic at the stretch of that race.
The number 3, and the winner returns to the scene of his biggest career victory. That was last fall's Grade 2 Bourbon, going a mile and a 16th at Keeneland. He was favored that day. He came with a very strong kick. Now, he's taken his show on the road in subsequent starts. The Fairgrounds, Sam Houston. Last time out, beaten at odds on in the Black Gold Stakes. You look at that short comment, you feel like he has an excuse.
He did get bumped at the start of that race. The winner, who's also back in here, that horse also got bumped at the start of that race, though. And this horse ran fine in there. It did sort of feel like, trying to close down the outside of that racetrack maybe wasn't ideal for him. But to me, I just felt like he didn't have a huge excuse, and he just got out finished. The one thing that I do like about him, Dan, is, and they're not the 2 fastest races, not even close to the 2 fastest races on his card, but to me, the 2 best races he's run have both been here at Keeneland, and he won 2 of his 3 starts here. I think he really likes this turf course.
And I think he's a bit dirtied up. The Bourbon, I thought, was a strong performance. The Breeders' Cup, there was nothing wrong with that effort. I thought it was in against some very
Yeah.
tough foes. They tried dirt in the Gun Runner. They caught a soft turf course, and he won that race, despite I don't really think him loving the surface. And then last time out, maybe that slowish pace, they went 51 and change, worked against him because he was outfinished that day by the unbeaten Wonderful Justice, the number 4, a horse that utilized his tactical speed to get the jump on, and the winner is, despite being bumped at the start.
Yeah, he took a pretty good bump at the start too, this horse, but he just powered right through it and got up into a really good trip in that race. The pace, to me, the problem that I had with giving and the winner is maybe too much credit for that is the pace looked slow on paper, but I did not think it was necessarily a slow pace, Dan. The horse that was cutting that thing actually opened up a few lengths up the backstretch and was clear around the final turn. And Wonderful Justice was just kind of fine with that. He just sat. They got to the top of the stretch. When he was asked for his best, he came with a really game finish, I thought, to get the job done in there. I like both of his starts. I do think he has to improve again, though. This is a pretty good field.
The 5, Rarefied Flair, enters this race for trainer Kenny McPeak off of a stakes victory over the all-weather at Turfway Park, a race in which he came from well off of the pace to just get up at 30-1. He has fine turf form. He did graduate at Saratoga, albeit in a blanket finish.
Yeah, he did run pretty well, though, breaking his maiden that day, Dan. And actually, his turf debut was a good performance, too, up at Saratoga. That was a really fast-paced race that he was in. I thought he did well to be third. He came back to win his next start. He's been okay since then. I mean, maybe he's the kind of horse you would want to see a little bit more improvement from, towards the end of last year. It didn't really happen, but he certainly felt like he took a step forward last time.
The number 6, Mi Hermano Ramon, won his first 2 starts, one going 2 turns, one sprinting, and he didn't have a great trip last time out in his stakes debut, the Baffle, when beaten by one of the better 3-year-old turf horses in Southern California, Johannes, who came back to win the Pasadena with a 91 Beyer speed figure. I can see some tactical speed and upside at a price for Johnny Velasquez.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I thought he was one of the more interesting horses at what should be a pretty big price in this race, Dan. I don't think you're going to be blown away by any of his performances, but I didn't think he got a great trip at all last time. Maybe he would have won, maybe not, but he certainly was going to be closer at the end of that race. And they've only gone 2 turns with him once in his career debut. I thought he ran great that day. He was the only first-time starter in that field. He won really easily, and it didn't look like the distance was any problem for him at all.
Mostache, the number 7, only beaten 3 lengths in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf, his final start of 2022. He came back in this race, the Columbia, last time out at Tampa Bay as his first prep at 3, and he is in with a chance at the 3/16 pole. He's going to make the lead. He's going to get run down late, but he runs just fine, and I think he can build off of this performance.
Yeah, true enough. He ran fine in here. Got a good trip. He's no match for this favored winner in the final furlong of this race. You're going to see the number 1, who's also number 1 in this race, Freedom Trail, coming way too late there. So this horse holds on for second. He ran okay, another step in the right direction. I thought his Breeders' Cup was fine last year, the first time they stretched him out. He's a contender for sure. I would just wait and see what kind of price he is.
Candidate, the number 8, goes out for Arnaud Delacour. This horse had a 3-race win streak snapped last time out in the Kitten's Joy Stakes, a pretty live grade 3 at Gulfstream. Not only did it produce 2 next out winners, but the horse that finished first, Major Dude, came back and ran second in the Jeff Ruby over the all-weather at Turfway with a 91 Beyer. Candidate had his chance in here. He's just going to get run down late. He's honest. I wonder if he's hit his peak, though. He's sort of paired up 86 Beyer tops, fast enough perhaps to win this race. I'm curious to see if he can take a step forward.
Me too. I feel the same way about him, Dan. And you know what? What would go a long way towards convincing me that he can do it would be his price. And he's 10-1 on the morning line here. His first 3 turf starts, I thought he ran really well in all of those on 3 different turf courses. They're all good performances to me. He ran fine last time. He just didn't really have an excuse there. And you could see how hard he was trying to get by Dude in Colorado through this stretch there. He couldn't really do it. He finally got second at the end of that race, but I wasn't, blown away by the performance of either him or Dude in Colorado that day.
I think Joel Rosario's got to grow aggressive with this horse coming out of the gate. I have a feeling he might be at his best when he's on the lead. He has a better post than some of the other speed horses. I think Joel can make the top with Candidate, and if he can back down the fractions, 10-1 is a certainly fair price. Nagarok is up next, the number 9. This horse won the Grade 3 Futurity sprinting at Aqueduct last year, then ran third in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. It was a fine race, and I wonder if maybe they ran him one too many times at 2. Here's the Eddie Logan, where he was the beaten favorite. It wasn't a big pace, but he was hard-ridden while close to it in the second flight. He comes 4 deep into the stretch, and he's trying. He finishes third without threatening the winner. It was a solid performance, and the 4th place horse came back to place in a stake in California with an 84 buyer.
Yeah, just couldn't find enough here in the late stages. Never stops trying, Dan, but he also never looked like he was getting there. He winds up settling for a sort of a mediocre third, I thought. He did run pretty well at the Breeders' Cup over this course last November. I thought he got a great trip and a great ride from Manny Franco in that race. But he did his best with it. He finished a pretty good third in that race, I thought. I don't know. He's another horse I'm not really sold on, at least to this point. But I realize that he's got some talent, and he's going to get a good trip in this race again, I think.
Big price on the 10 Mo Visitor. Only lifetime victory came on the Tapeta surface at Presque Isle Downs. Only turf start. He was a big price. The finish line doesn't look, the running line doesn't look very well, but he probably had an excuse. It was a yielding turf course, and he was up close to the pace. That being said, he's going to have to do a lot. First off the layoff, getting back to turf.
Yeah, question, I guess, how many excuses do you want to give him for that Pilgrim? He had the far outside post, yielding ground, tried to use his speed, didn't work out. I don't know how many you can pile on there, Dan. He's going to be a very big price once again, though, if you want to take a shot.
All eyes on the 11, Carl Spackler, a very impressive maiden winner in his second lifetime start at Gulfstream Park with a 92 buyer speed figure. Let's watch Carl Spackler, who settled just off the early leaders, and when it was time to go, he went. He makes the lead, and he just flies home.
Yeah, I mean, listen, maybe this is just a terrible field that he's beating here. The final time would suggest otherwise. It seems like this horse just really ran in this race. And, well, you don't see too many horses win a maiden special weight on turf by that kind of a margin. I mean, this horse was seriously good last time. And it's not like it's, sort of one of those one-off things, Dan. He probably ran just as well in his career debut when he took a very tough beat to a really good horse in Far Bridge. I mean, this horse, we've seen him twice. He's run great both times.
I do respect the 12 dude in Colorado. I'm not sure I want to take a relatively short price on him. I think he might be a little bit dressed up. We saw a candidate go by him in the Kitten's Joy 2 starts back, a race in which he finished third. And then he came back and he won this race, the Colonel Liam, against Webslinger. But he had a very easy trip, so sitting off this long shot pace setter through a very moderate pace. He got the jump on Webslinger and he holds sway. It's hard to convince me he's going to get that kind of a trip from this post position with other speeds to his inside.
Yeah, that's how I thought about it too, Dan. I mean, he ran fine in here, but he got a perfect trip in this race, and I don't think that he ran any better than Webslinger did that day. I would just rather have Webslinger out of that race, and we'll see. Especially if this horse is 9-2. I mean, I'm not looking to take that kind of price on him. Although his last 2 turf races, the figures suggest he fits right in here.
This is a very competitive group of 3-year-old turf horses lining up at Keeneland on opening day. Let's take a look at our top selections in here. And Mike, I know you were blown away by Carl Spackler's performance, the way he kicked home. He's now got to do it against tougher, but this horse has a lot of potential.
Yeah, it really does seem that way, Dan. I mean, I didn't really want to take him because, listen, he's 3-1 on the morning line. To me, that actually feels like a fair price. You're not getting it. He's going to be shorter than that. So I thought about just picking somebody else because this horse is going to take so much money. But to me, his 2 races are both really good. I think he's going to be really tough in here. If for some reason I decide to go against him, it's going to be with the 1 Freedom Trail. He was good as a 2-year-old, very unlucky in his 3-year-old debut.
I'm really curious to see what the 9 Nagarok can do. I think there are some questions about distance. Is he eventually going to be sort of a late running or mid-pack type sprinter? I think he can get a middle distance, and he goes out for one of the great layoff trainers in the game, Graham Motion. So I'm not too concerned that he doesn't have a prep race this year coming in. He's 8-1 on the morning line. If he stays at that price, that's fair. 9, 12, 11, 8 for me, 11, 1, 2, 6 for Mike, and the Transylvania at Keeneland. Good luck.